Hi, and welcome. So you might see some things that look a little bit different. Basically, we got a new name. That's right. That's right. I'd like to give a shout out to Alex, who actually helped with the name. I think this is the one. I'm really happy with it. I like the direction. I got to keep a few things from some of the other names that I wanted to go with, but Assured and Brazen is going to be the name of the podcast going forward. Yeah, I'm really happy about it. No, I know I'm happy about it. I'll just say that. So basically, the name took a little while to get. Of course, going through some name changes. Brazen and Bold was taken. Solid Ground was taken. And then finally, after doing some, deliberation and like I said, talking to my friend Alex, his family actually, got to brainstorm a little bit and he gave me some good ideas. So shout out to you, Alex. Yeah, appreciate that, man. Assured and brazen. Assured and brazen. Assured meaning we're assured in the Lord. Brazen meaning we're bold and shameless about it. Clap it up, clap it up, clap it up. So, um, it took a little while, but we got a name finally. Apologize for all the confusion. We're on episode three. I don't know if you're aware, but episode three is where most podcasts tend to die. So people don't get past episode three. Um, and I'm kind of happy to say, like, we got here. We got here. We're here now. We're here. We're established, right? Um, how many episodes will we have? I don't know, but in this season. We'll see. I definitely like the format. Been getting good feedback from you guys. Wherever you're listening to this, YouTube, Amazon, Apple, Deezer, iHeart. Yeah, we're happy to come through your airwaves and definitely check out how we're gonna go forward with this. So yeah. Let's do it. Let's do good things. So basically on my end, I've been kind of trying to see, as I mentioned, like how we're gonna do this podcast format and everything like that. And I'd like any feedback. I think somewhere down below you'll see my email. You can actually send me an email and we can go from there. And we can see how like what critiques you guys have for me, what kind of content you want me to talk about, and we will go from there. So today's topic is going to be the frequency of the rock. We're talking about hearing God in the noise. And I think this is going to be an interesting topic. Not only because we are talking about like how to better understand where we're going with, the noise around us, right? We live in a world that is screaming at us like all the time between the news, all our articles, the alerts on your phone, social media feeds, your to-do list, right? We're buried in a digital avalanche of things that we have to do on a daily basis. And people tend to think that God is quiet. But the truth is, we just turn the volume of the world up and we're not tuning into what God has to say. It's almost like God's whispering to us. And people tend to think like, how am I going to hear God? It's really hard to hear God when he's talking or saying things, but like it's kind of like if you're standing in the middle of construction site. You don't blame the guy whispering for being too quiet when you're hearing jackhammers in your background, right? I don't know if you know how jackhammers work, but they're like one of the loudest things when they're breaking the concrete. It's one of those things that if you don't have earplugs in, it's probably the loudest thing around you. Even louder than the cars honking, the machinery moving around. It's probably the loudest thing, right? Um, so today, I'm your host, Kevin, of the new podcast. Well, not new, it's only a couple episodes old, but I'm your host, Kevin, of the podcast Assured and Brazen. And today we're going to talk about the signal and the static. It's time to stop looking for God in the loud and start looking for Him in the low. So, something I want to talk about, if we go to 1 Kings 19, we have the story of this man called Elijah. Elijah was at a breaking point where he expected God to show up in the wind, the earthquake, and the fire, right? The loud things around us, like I was saying before, a jackhammer as the example. But God wasn't in the chaos, he was in thin silence. The truth is, oftentimes when we're thinking about how God's talking to us, right? People think God's like screaming to us with a megaphone, but I think that's not really the case, right? God is more like your friend, right? He's trying to tell you things, he's gonna whisper things to you. He's gonna say it in a voice that you only recognize, right? But if you don't recognize the voice that he has, it sounds like he's whispering to you. And God whispers because he's close. But when you're in a loud crowd, that's when you need the megaphone to get people's attention. So if you're doing something that displeases God, if you're doing something that is, how can I say, is close to his heart or you have good heart posture towards what he's doing for you, I think that's when you're going to hear him more. If you can't hear him, I think the solution isn't for him to get louder, it's for you to get closer. Does that make sense? So let me repeat that again. If you can't hear God, the solution isn't for him to get louder, it's for you to get closer. So how can we get closer? I've struggled with this myself. Like I know in the past I would look to God and say like, maybe pray once a week or read my Bible once a week. And these are things that like, although they're minor to you, they're big in the grand scheme of like God's eyes, right? You're trying to get his attention, try to ask him for things, ask him for favors, but yet you talk to him less than you talk to your own pet or less than you binge a TV show. These are all things that you can definitely improve on, right? But how can we get there, right? This is why I'm kind of laying these out because these are probably examples that you probably can relate to on your day to day life. So how can we find that balance to where you're hearing God's voice, you're putting more effort into getting to know God, but at the same time, you're also putting less of yourself towards the world matters, the world static, like I said. I don't think we have a hearing problem, we have a filtering problem. And what we're filtering is basically we're filtering out God's voice. And we've been trained to believe that being informed is the same as being wise, and it's not. It's just being loud. So how can we like tune that frequency to the Lord's voice? We tune that dial. I think silence is that empty space that we have to so we have the story of Elijah. If we go to First Kings 19, Elijah was at a breaking point and he expected God to show up in the wind, in the earthquake, and in the fire, right? The really loud stuff in our environments, right? And God wasn't in the chaos. He was in silence. The thing about God is he's so he's so good to us that he whispers because he's so close, right? People tend to think that like God has this megaphone ready to like shout what he wants to you, right? Like in the crowd of all the things that you're asking for him, right? The whispers, your friends, your the things that you're asking for him, right? And you can't hear him because like God is not going to get louder for you. You just have to get closer to him. And I think that's the solution. When you're in this loud environment, people are like, "Hey, like I need to speak up louder and maybe that he'll hear me." But that's not the case. He's close enough to you where he could just whisper. And now you're looking at like things differently. If you had someone next to you that was always there within like arm's distance, you don't have to yell. You have to just talk to them like in a regular tone of voice. Of course, if you're in a really loud environment, you got to get closer to that person, right? So if we think of it in this way, it becomes more understandable and more bite-sized for us to understand. So how can we get closer to God in a sense that we just want to um, be within arm's distance? How do we do that? Do we evaluate ourselves first, or do we think God is just not hearing us? So here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about your last 24 hours. if we were to print out a transcript of everything that you've done in the last 24 hours, of course, you'll have maybe things that you listen to, TV shows, news, social media comments, music. I'm sure you'll have a million things in that list of things. And if we were to evaluate those last 24 hours, even like the minutes in those last 24 hours, right? The seconds in those last 24 hours, how much of that time is spent with God? Or how much do you think of that time is spent with the voice of listening to the voice of God? It's crazy to think, but it probably won't be a big slice of that 24 hours. Maybe half a sentence, maybe a really short amount of time. So it's kind of we've reached a place in society where the crack, I would say, or the area that we need to focus the most on is the static of the world. If we're comparing this to a book has thousands and thousands of pages. The world, if we could put it in a book, it has 1,000 pages plus. And if we look at the kingdom as a signal, like the kingdom of heaven as a signal itself, maybe it's half a sentence in that book, or in your book, I should say. So how do we get rid of that noise and filter through all that garbage to get to, the voice of God, that foundation, that kingdom signal or that kingdom noise that you want to tune into, right? So I think we have a hearing problem, and we also have like a filtering problem. And we've been trained to believe that being informed is the same as being wise, right? And it's not. It's just being loud, right? So you're like that jackhammer that I described earlier, right? You're in that environment of just being in a loud environment, and you can't hear the things around you. You can see the people around you, I'm sure, but you can't hear the things around you. So when God's talking to you, how do we tune into that frequency? How do we tune that dial? Make sure we're on that same frequency, same wavelength. And I think the way that we tune it is that we sit in silence in an empty space. So if you are sitting in silence in a workspace or in your office, you get to like focus on what you're doing. When you're in the office, you're sitting in silence most times. When you do get that distraction, coworker come check on you, you do get distracted. Maybe the noise of something maybe distracted you. Someone at the water jug made some noises or whatever, and it might throw you off a little bit. But when you're sitting in that silence, you get to focus on whatever it is you're working on. So I personally believe that sitting in silence is when the Holy Spirit gets to work on you. And when you're sitting in that silence, it's amazing. So I would say the way that we can dial and like tune into God's frequency is we have to be in silence. Silence isn't an empty space. It's the workspace for the spirit. So I think people are so attached to having attention or having distractions around them. And nobody likes to sit in that silence. It's like kind of an awkward space for most people, I would say. Just to like sit in silence and try to, listen to what God's saying to you, right? So how can we achieve, or how can we receive that thing that we're trying to, you know, um, that thing that we're trying to not only hear, but that thing that we're trying to understand, right? We have to sit in that silence, and that's where the Holy Spirit works. So I want to give you guys a challenge. And I think the challenge for this episode is going to be for 1 hour today, your phone goes into a drawer, not into the desk, 60 minutes of offline time. And you're going to tell God that the line is clear. And for that 60 minutes, it might be pretty tough, I would say. 60 minutes is a long time to just sit in silence. But maybe in that 60 minutes that you take, you'll get that message or that prayer answer that you were trying to get. You're not distracted by the things around you. You're just listening to God for that 60 minutes. And you're going to tell him, hey, my line's clear, Lord, talk to me. I'm here to listen. And one of the things that we do a lot also is we definitely pray to God. And I feel like sometimes we don't even take the time to listen to him. So this challenge is set to kind of open people's minds to a different perspective of like how we can pray or how we can sit in prayer with the Spirit, right? And just listen to what the Spirit's trying to tell us. And I think that's how we're gonna end this podcast. And I'd say stay assured, stay brazen. Peace.